Get ready for your daily dose of WordPress and web development tips, tricks, and insights to help you find success with WordPress. You're listening to WP the Podcast with your hosts, David Blackman and Tim Streifler.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of WP the Podcast, brought to you by WPGears.com. I'm David Blackman.
And I'm Tim Streifler.
Today in episode 658, we're going to discuss WordPress 5.5. It's coming out the first week of August. WordPress will be making a pretty major update to its core functionality. And Tim and I don't normally do this, but we felt like it was something we wanted to start doing. When WordPress releases a main update, we won't be doing it for all the updates, but when they release some core functionality and make some significant changes, we felt like it might be important for us to cover it on WP the Podcast, since we're a WordPress podcast. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are actually taking some of the notes from today's episode from our good friend Adam Prizer over at WP Crafter. Definitely check him out. He's a great guy. We're friends with him, and he puts out some really great content. So he did a episode published July 8th titled Huge WordPress Update Coming, version 5.5. Everything is about to get a whole lot better. And so Dave and I both watched his video, and so we're not going to reinvent the wheel. We're going to summarize, and then we're going to point you over to his channel to watch the video more in depth if you want to dive deeper than what we're covering. But we're going to give you a high-level overview today.
Absolutely. You want to kick it off, or you want me to start?
I can go ahead and start. So there's a lot in this video, and as I mentioned, we're not going to cover everything, but one of the big things is the performance, specifically with Gutenberg. Now, if you're using any type of page builder with WordPress, you know one of the drawbacks of using a page builder is it's going to slow down your site just a teeny bit, because there's just a lot more happening on your site, a lot more that WordPress has to do, a lot more work, a lot more CSS, JavaScript, everything. However, it's a small price to pay for all the power that you have at your fingertips in terms of customization ability. Well, the Gutenberg block builder is not nearly as powerful as the other builders out there. However, they've made some really big optimizations, and they are able to load a page extremely fast. So the native Gutenberg builder might not be as powerful as some of the other builders out there, but it definitely is the fastest, and hopefully it'll push its competitors to become faster too. And when I say competitors, I'm talking about the other WordPress builders such as Divi, Elementor, etc.
Awesome. The next feature that we want to discuss that we think is pretty important is auto plugin and theme updates, automatically allowing you to update. Now, I'm going to put this out there before we even talk about this. I'm not really sure I would do this across the board for all of my plugins and themes, because some of them do have the potential, obviously, to break your site. So you don't want to arbitrarily ever just go in and select auto updates on everything, because your site could potentially get broken depending on the breakage. I mean, if you think about it, if you're new to WordPress, WordPress is a piece of software. Plugins and themes are other pieces of software that are interacting with each other. WordPress has an update. Well, plugin or theme may not have updated to the latest WordPress yet, and it could potentially break your site. That's kind of layman's terms. So what WordPress core is now going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you to pick and choose which ones you want to auto update. So it's not a blanket overall, you have to do it all or nothing. It actually allows you to go into each plugin on your site, each theme, or one theme, your theme. I don't know of any sites that are running multiple themes unless they're a multi-site. It'll allow you to go in and choose whether or not you want a specific plugin to do an automatic update. And there may be some that are safe. They don't, have a ton of functionality. It's not going to destroy your site, and you may want to just go ahead and allow it to auto update every time. So, yeah, it's a great new feature.
Yeah, and if you do that, only do it if you already have daily automatic backups happening, because otherwise it could get disastrous. But as David mentioned, maybe some of the ones that maybe aren't as key to the functionality of your website would be the safe ones to enable. The next feature is XML sitemaps are going to be built into WordPress. So if you don't know what an XML sitemap is, it's essentially a map of all of your pages on your site, all of the content and the links for that content, and it basically gets submitted to Google via Google Search Console, and it tells Google, here's my website, now go and index it. And it's basically you telling Google where to find all your stuff for your website. Now, typically you have to use some sort of a plugin, whether it's an SEO plugin, Yoast and all-in-one SEO framework. I'm pretty sure all of the major SEO plugins have sitemaps built in, or there probably is also standalone sitemap plugins as well. But either way, you used to have to use some sort of a plugin, and it, when you create new content, automatically updates the sitemap, and so Google's notified through that when you add content. But you used to have to use an additional plugin, as I mentioned, and so now with WordPress 5.5, it's going to be built in, which really it's something that should have been built in years ago, because every website needs a sitemap that wants to be found on the search engine. So that's something that's pretty cool. You won't have to configure it in a plugin. It's just going to be configured natively within WordPress.
Awesome. The last feature that we want to focus on is native lazy loading images. And you may be asking yourself, what the heck is native image lazy loading? And I'm going to kind of give you basically what lazy loading is it's the technique that defers the loading of non-critical resources, images in the case that we're discussing right now, and leaving them off screen until you need them. Images or iframes load on the page only when the user needs to display them. So if you're scrolling down the page and you come upon an image, it's going to pull up that image. Whereas normally, without lazy loading attributes, it loads all the images on the page and everything, regardless of whether or not you're down at the bottom looking at those images and stuff. So adding native lazy loading into WordPress core is a pretty big deal, because guess what? It's going to go back to point one, which is site speed, which is going to allow your pages to load a whole lot quicker, especially for your user. And it's a great user experience because your user we don't have to wait for everything to load on a page. We can only, as we get to it, it loads and we need it and stuff, and it just makes things run a lot faster as opposed to everything loading at once. Tim, I'm not sure if I covered that well. I'm typically not the tech guy. Tim is, so if I missed something, please correct me.
Yeah, no, that was good. Now, there's other things mentioned that will be released in WordPress 5.5. A lot of the ones we haven't talked about yet are centered around the block builder specifically. So we're not going to dive into that, but as we mentioned, you can go to Adam's video and watch that. But for example, some of them are like being able to drag spacing, copy and paste styles, responsive controls, device previews. And a lot of those things are kind of copied directly from page builders like Divi, and so if you're already using Divi, then those things will seem familiar to you. But yeah, that's basically it. There's a lot of cool things coming. It's definitely, I would call it a major WordPress update.
Absolutely. You can look for that at the beginning of August, I think, is the slated release time for WordPress 5.5. All right, tomorrow we've got another great episode 659, why we install Cloudflare on every website we build. It's important. Come check it out tomorrow. Tim, until tomorrow, we'll see you then.
Take care. Bye-bye.
We've come to the end of today's episode of WP the Podcast. Join us tomorrow for more daily tips and strategies designed to help you run your WordPress business toward success. Remember to subscribe to WP the Podcast so you can stay up to date with each episode. And don't forget to rate and review us. We'll see you again tomorrow right here on WP the Podcast.